Good afternoon, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching AnewZ. These are your headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza are underway. Trump says he will send the EU a tariff letter in the coming days. Wildfires in Marseille, France, injured 110 people. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a ceasefire deal in Gaza is in the works. His comments came during a visit to Washington, where he met with US President Donald Trump.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that efforts are underway toward reaching a ceasefire deal in Gaza. His statement came during a visit to Washington, where he met with US President Donald Trump and other top officials. Netanyahu reaffirmed his commitment to eliminating Hamas and securing the release of the remaining Israeli hostages.
We have still to finish the job in Gaza, release all our hostages, eliminate and destroy Hamas's military and governance capabilities, because Gaza must have a different future for our sake, for everyone's sake. And no country will settle for less. We certainly will not.
The Israeli PM also spoke of the peace process and the hurdles preventing the completion of the ceasefire deal.
Well, we're certainly working on it. I can't speak in advance. You need several parties to tango. It's not even two here. But we're working on it diligently as we speak. In fact, on the way over here and on the way from here. We're not going to let up. We have a goal. We intend to achieve that goal.
Meanwhile, US Special Envoy for Peace Missions, Steve Witkoff, who also met with Netanyahu, expressed hope that a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza would be reached by the end of the week, following progress in proximity talks. Witkoff said the proposed agreement includes the release of 10 living hostages and the remains of 9 deceased, expressing optimism that this could pave the way for lasting peace in the region. This marks Netanyahu's third visit to Washington since Trump returned to office earlier this year. Trump has repeatedly spoken about ending the war in the Middle East and assuming administrative control over the Gaza Strip to redevelop the territory, a plan that Netanyahu has supported.
I think President Trump had a brilliant vision. It's called free choice. You know, if people want to stay, they can stay. But if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will seek to realize what they always say, that they want to give the Palestinians a better future.
Netanyahu's visit to Washington underscores his strong ties with Trump, as both the United States and Israel continue to share a common stance on tensions in the Middle East.
Russia targeted Ukraine with a record 728 drones overnight. The attacks came as US President Donald Trump pledged to send more defensive weapons to Kyiv and criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's military says it destroyed most of the drones and at least one person has been injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for sanctions on the sources of income Russia uses to finance the war, including those who purchase Russian oil. The US President Donald Trump has approved the delivery of additional defensive weapons to Ukraine, reversing an earlier pause and signalling a tougher stance against Russia amid escalating attacks. Joining us to discuss is Andriy Ordinovich. He's a retired colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Colonel, thanks for joining the program today.
Thank you for catching up again.
Now, let me just be very clear here. We've heard reports coming from the White House, but what is it that Ukraine will get now, and how will those shipments bear upon its battleground prospects now?
The delivery of security assistance from the US government was going on with some kind of pause, which has been mainly politically oriented or politically driven. Right now, we hope that we would get more air defense missile assets, because the numbers of the weapons in the new package of this assistance could have several significant effects or impacts on Ukraine. It's a lie down through the three levels of command and control and strategic, operational, tactical one. As well, it's going to have direct and indirect effects on our ability to fight. Everything would depend on what type of the scope of this delivery. Because in previous time, it was mainly experts criticized the US government as well as other Western power government to supply very slow and a very small number. It means everything would depend on the types. We hope that among all types of weapons, we will get air defense. We will get more artillery shell. We will get more precise guided munitions. Everything will depend on quality and quantity, as well as manners of delivery and time of integration of those systems into the existing weapons. Among the priority, as I already mentioned it, air defense, and your program today indicated 728, the combination of air targets, among them mainly UAVs, but also it was ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. And we expect they will achieve primarily following strategic objectives. Having these weapons in our hands, we will try to reduce the offensive potential of Russian military. Second, we would increase our defensive potential in different level, as well as we will enable making localization some breakthrough which Russian achieved in recent months, as well as we will have possibility to free up our manpower in order to create appropriate condition to counter-offensive. And more importantly and strategically, that it could encourage EU members and other countries to speed up or continue to make the delivery. On tactical level, I believe it could give a possibility to protect our strategic targets, including critical infrastructure, including airfields, including the logistical hub and so on. It also would create some favorable condition for rear area operation when we will have more defensive munitions.
Okay.
It also could preserve our future planning and operation, and for sure it would make a degradation of Russian air power or air means would disturbing very hardly us.
Okay, and Colonel, President Zelensky once described US Patriot systems as real lifesavers and real protectors of life. What else does Ukraine need in a military sense to hold the line for the time being?
Look at Patriot system is one of the best to deal with the ballistic and air ballistic missiles. If you are depleted, you have a high risk to receive the precise targeting of Ukrainian infrastructure, some military object as well. Like some real example, in 2024, the effects of using Patriot system was almost 100%. With additional system, what we have in air defense, we've been able up to the 60% of different type of missiles have been shut down. Also, it helped small range of air defense system helped us more than 70% to shut down the different type of Shahed, as well as different type of UAVs. But with other systems, it could help to do the electronic warfare and eliminate this kind of threat. The Patriots, we needed more. It was different figures, different numbers, but we hope that US government will provide more missiles and more systems, as well as the German government already introduced their attention. It could help specifically to secure our strategic targets, infrastructure, facility, civilian population, as well as our stocks, our logistical hubs, and primarily focusing on main city, which have more than 1 million population there.
Okay. Colonel, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Thank you.
US President Donald Trump says the United States is likely just days away from sending a formal letter to the European Union outlining potential tariffs. The announcement follows ongoing trade discussions between Washington and Brussels. The announcement follows a broader plan targeting 14 countries with tariffs ranging from 25 to 40%. While the EU hasn't received formal notice, sources say it's seeking possible exemptions from a proposed 10% baseline. The measures will take effect on the 1st of August.
European Union judges. Well, the European Union has been speaking to us, Ursula and the whole group, and they've been very nice. They treated us very badly until recently. Now they're treating us very nicely. It's like a different world, actually. They've treated us very badly. They were among the toughest to deal with. Actually, in many respects, they were much worse than China. Look at what they do to our companies. They sue Apple, they sue Google. 17 billion they got from Apple on a lawsuit that they didn't have a case. They have, judges that are European Union judges. And they ruled, they take so much money away from our country in terms of that, in terms of other things that they do. They're very tough. But now they're being very nice to us, and we'll see what happens. We're probably 2 days off from sending them a letter. We are talking to them. I just want you to know, a letter means a deal.
A major wildfire on the Mediterranean coast in France has triggered a large-scale emergency response. As flames reach the outskirts of Marseille, authorities scramble to protect homes and critical infrastructure.
A fast-moving wildfire has scorched the outskirts of Marseille, France's second-largest city, injuring more than 110 people and forcing hundreds to evacuate the area. The blaze, fanned by strong winds reaching up to 70 kilometers per hour, ignited after a car caught fire on a nearby motorway. Thick smoke loomed over residential areas, darkening the skies and reaching as far as the city centre. Authorities issued emergency phone alerts advising residents to stay indoors and seal their homes with damp cloths. The nearby airport was temporarily closed due to the hazardous conditions. By Tuesday evening, officials said the fire was considered under control, though still burning, and warned that forecasted winds could reignite its advance. Over 800 firefighters, backed by helicopters and aircraft, have been deployed to the scene. Regional Prefect Georges François Leclerc confirmed the fire had consumed around 700 hectares, or 1,730 acres.
La situation n'est pas figée.
The situation has not been stopped. It has not been stabilized, but it has been brought under control. Why? Firstly, because we have deployed a great deal of forces. Second, because although several firefighters have been injured, 9, only 1 has had to be evacuated. Thirdly, residents are staying at home. I ask the people of Marseille to stay in their homes.
Confinés. Et je demande à la population de Marseille.
At least 400 residents have been evacuated, with 20 buildings partially damaged.
Yes, it was pretty impressive with the smell, itchy eyes. It wasn't very pleasant.
The problem is that since the smoke is drifting southwards, it covers the whole city, and around 4 p.m. they asked us to go home because people were having difficulty breathing, so that's what I did.
However, no fatalities have been reported, and authorities say hundreds of homes have been saved thanks to the massive emergency response.
New climate figures have just been released and they paint a stark picture of rising temperatures across Europe. The data highlights troubling regional and global patterns as experts warn of more frequent heat events. Here's what the latest Copernicus report reveals.
Western Europe has just recorded its hottest June ever, according to new data from the Copernicus Climate Change Service. The average temperature for the region reached 20.49 degrees Celsius, marking an all-time high for that month. Globally, the month ranked as the 3rd warmest June on record and the 5th warmest across Europe as a whole. The report, published on Wednesday, points to what it says are anomalies and extreme heat between the 17th of June and the 5th of July. During this period, global surface air temperatures were 1.1 degrees Celsius, higher than the average between 1991 and 2020, the standard reference period for climate comparisons. There were also 2 significant heat waves which struck Western Europe during the latter half of June. According to Copernicus climate scientist Freya Vanborg, both events originated on the Iberian Peninsula and spread northeast across France, the UK, Germany and parts of southern Europe.
We had quite, during spring, kind of a split between more the north and the southern part of Europe, where the north was generally a lot drier and the south kind of wet to average, let's say. And with these heat events that we're now seeing during June and a lot less rain in those areas, those are also drying up. Which regions specifically will now quantify to actually say are in drought, I can't say specifically.
Additionally, sea surface temperatures in the Western Mediterranean rose steadily through June, which also contributed to increased heat stress in surrounding areas. Despite the regional extremes, the month of June was still cooler globally than the past 2 years. The average global temperature was 1.3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, but below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold that has been previously surpassed. Vanborg explains that while the planet is on a long-term warming trajectory, natural fluctuations like the El Niño Southern Oscillation still influence year-to-year variability.
So even though we're on this global warming, increasing temperature kind of ladder, on top of that we always have variations, and some of those are due to, for instance, to this ENSO phenomenon. And in 2023-24, there was a strong El Niño, and that typically boosts temperatures above that kind of ever-increasing ladder. And now we're still on that ever-increasing ladder, but in more neutral conditions, and that's one of the reasons for why it's now, let's say, cooler relative to the last 2 years. It's still very warm relative to all other years.
Copernicus, operating under the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, warns that Europe is likely to see more frequent, more intense and more widespread heat waves in the coming years due to climate change.
Deadly flash floods have claimed more than 100 lives in Texas, with more than 170 still missing in one county alone. New Mexico is also under emergency conditions as search and rescue operations continue across both states.
4 days after catastrophic flash floods swept through parts of Texas and New Mexico, the death toll has risen to at least 111, with over 172 people still missing in a single Texas county. The hardest hit region is Kerrville, where 94 of the fatalities were recorded. Officials say hopes are fading for finding more survivors alive. Governor Greg Abbott confirmed the grim numbers at a news conference on Tuesday, calling the situation devastating. Governor promised that search and rescue teams will not stop until every missing person is accounted for. He also warned that more names may be added to the list of the missing in the coming days.
There's nothing more important on our hearts and minds than the people of this community, especially those who are still lost. I told them what we were doing, not just today, but what we are going to be doing for the days, weeks, and months to come. This is what they needed to hear. They need to know Texas is in this with the people in the Hill Country right here. We are not leaving until this job is finished.
Kerr County alone has deployed more than 250 emergency responders, including FBI agents, Border Patrol officers, and National Guard troops. Air operations have ramped up significantly, with 13 Black Hawk helicopters, alongside Chinook helicopters and drones. Among the most heart-wrenching incidents was at Camp Mystic, a nearly century-old all-girls summer camp in Hunt, Texas. The camp confirmed that at least 27 campers and counselors lost their lives in the flooding. Rescue crews continue to clear debris and search the banks of the Guadalupe River, where many of the tragedies occurred. Meanwhile, in neighboring New Mexico, the National Weather Service declared a flash flood emergency in Ruidoso after the village's river crested at a record 20.24 feet. Emergency crews carried out more than 50 swift water rescues, pulling people from submerged homes and stranded vehicles. In response to the disaster, the village of Ruidoso has requested federal assistance. President Donald Trump, along with First Lady Melania Trump, is expected to visit the affected regions on Friday.
I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady. She will be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area.
Experts point to a combination of factors that made the Texas disaster especially lethal, including extreme weather, the vulnerable location of many holiday homes, and the lack of early warning systems.
The World Food Programme has warned that 10 million Afghans face hunger this summer, but only a fraction can get help due to funding cuts. Afghanistan's government is calling for sanctions to be lifted and for greater investment to support long-term recovery. Tamim Bahis reports from Kabul.
The World Food Programme has issued a stark warning about the deepening humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. According to the agency, 10 million people across the country are facing hunger this summer. But due to a severe lack of funding, only 1 million of them can be reached with food assistance. This alarming shortfall comes as Afghanistan tops the list of countries facing urgent humanitarian concerns. Despite the growing needs, international aid has been significantly reduced. As a result, millions of families are struggling with food shortages, unemployment, and rising poverty. The Ministry of Economy says it has launched new programs aimed at tackling poverty and unemployment. Officials believe that long-term solutions lie in economic recovery, not just emergency aid. They are calling for the lifting of sanctions and more international investment in projects that create jobs and increase families' ability to provide for themselves. Key drivers of the crisis include widespread unemployment, reduced foreign assistance, recent natural disasters, and limited access to health and education services. These issues have not only worsened hunger, but have also forced many families to flee their homes and send their children into hard labor. As the crisis unfolds, Afghan families continue to wait for sustained international support and real steps toward recovery. Tamim Bahis reporting for AnewZ in Kabul, Afghanistan.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Taliban Supreme Leader Haibatullah Akhundzada and Chief Justice Abdul Hakim Haqqani, charging them with crimes against humanity for the systematic persecution of women and girls under Taliban rule in Afghanistan. Joining us is Dr. Ashfaq Ahmed from the University of Sargodha in Punjab, Pakistan. Thank you for joining us on the program today, Doctor.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Now, what evidence did the International Criminal Court use to support these arrest warrants against Taliban leaders?
Basically, I was expecting this particular decision by the International Criminal Court because if, let's suppose, you look at the International Criminal Court and prior to that, there had been some reports. For instance, Amnesty International and United Nations, all of them, they have issued reports. For example, if you talk about United Nations, it has termed Afghanistan as one of the most repressive area or country in the world for women. And secondly, the United Nations has also used the term gender apartheid for the women in Afghanistan. And as far as Amnesty International is concerned, it has also used the term as the Afghan woman has been sentenced to slow death. So these are the issues. And moreover, if you talk about Afghan women and their rights, they have not been allowed to travel, for instance, without a male family members in the public, and they have not been allowed to raise voice in the public. So if a woman raises voice in the public, she can be sent to the arbitrary places set up that has been set up by the Taliban regime. So these are all issues. These have been used as evidences by the Criminal Court and the prosecutor Karim Khan, which launched this particular case in 2021. So these are the evidences which has been produced by the Criminal Court.
Okay, and what challenges could arise in enforcing these warrants given Afghanistan's political situation?
The first and foremost challenge is that the the decision which was made by the predecessor government of Taliban in 2000, soon after the formation of the government, Karzai government, to join International Criminal Court, but that has been, this decision has been withdrawn by the current Taliban regime. So that is the first issue, that they are not accepting the international pressure which has been put on the Taliban regime. And secondly, the International Criminal Court has also been criticized by the Taliban regime for, for not respecting the Muslim laws. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is that International Criminal Court, it does not have its own police, which can arrest these two alleged leaders of the Taliban regime. And moreover, the member states, they can also be approached to arrest these two leaders. But the problem is that these two leaders have never traveled abroad. So these are the challenges which we can face in implementing these particular orders, arrest orders.
Okay.
Warrants.
And Doctor, could these warrants escalate the isolation of the Taliban-led government or change its internal dynamics?
There are two views about it. For example, Taliban regime, they can come up with cosmetic reforms in order to ease the pressure, international pressure, so that can be one of the issues, or they can modify the rhetoric that they are not suppressing the female or the woman. So that is one aspect. But the other issue is that Taliban may retaliate. For example, if you look at the statement issued by Zabiullah Mujahid, who is the spokesperson of Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he has rejected this particular verdict and stating that they do not recognize this particular verdict, as they do not recognize the International Criminal Court. So that is the issue which we are facing right now. And to be, to share the worst case scenario for the Taliban regime, that can be before 2021. When this Taliban regime came into power, nobody knew that who is Habibullah Khunzada or their Chief Justice, but now everyone knows that who is Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson, who is Khunzada. So the possibility is that might be. I'm not saying that it is going to happen, but there is a possibility that drone attack may be carried out, or we saw that Ayman al-Zawahiri was he was assassinated by in a drone attack. So such drone attacks might be carried out. But this is a speculation. This is my view. I don't believe that this is going to happen, because it will be too much of action taken by the international community.
Okay, Dr. Ashfaq Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us on AnewZ today.
Thank you so much for providing me the opportunity.
A bilateral meeting will be held between President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, and Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, in Abu Dhabi on the 10th of July. This was reported by the press office of the President of Azerbaijan. The meeting will take place as part of the ongoing peace process between the two countries. In Georgia, tensions are rising ahead of local elections. The Speaker of Parliament is accusing EU-funded NGOs of interference, while other officials are trying to reassure international partners. Nini Nikolashvili has more in Tbilisi.
Organizations funded by the EU Embassy are preparing to disrupt Georgia's local elections. This is the fact. With this direct accusation, the Speaker of Parliament, Shala Papashvili, sent shockwaves through the political landscape. According to him, the EU ambassador is sanctioning funding of groups that are allegedly working to undermine Georgia's electoral process. Papashvili says that the full responsibility will lie with the donors and vows that the ruling party will publicly name and expose both organizations and funders if necessary. His words: let's not let the Brussels bureaucracy destroy the EU's reputation. But just hours later, a very different message came from another corner of the government. The first deputy foreign minister, George Zurabashvili, and the head of anti-corruption bureau, President Kukrashvili, met with foreign diplomats to ensure them that the controversial FARA and grants law pose no direct threat to NGOs' activities. They say that the new regulations aim to enhance transparency and are based on democratic standards. Kukrashvili was clear: there are no circumstances today that threaten NGO activity. He also emphasized ongoing dialogue with international partners, describing the meeting as the open, detailed, and constructive. So while the top officials accused the EU funding organizations of plotting to interfere the elections, others insist that the communication and cooperation with the international community remains solid and lawful NGO activity is not at risk. This is Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
President of Kyrgyzstan Sadir Japarov arrived in Dushanbe for an official visit, where he met with the President of Tajikistan, Emomali Rahmon, to discuss strengthening bilateral cooperation. Their talks focused on social infrastructure, multilateral coordination and border community issues. Rahmon praised progress on border delimitation and growing trade and security ties. Japarov thanked Tajikistan for its hospitality and stressed the importance of the border agreement for regional stability. China remains the largest investor in Tajikistan's economy. During the last 18 years, Beijing has invested more than $5 billion in the Central Asian Republic. These figures were announced in Dushanbe during a session of the country's lower house of parliament. Our correspondent Fraser Kalimurzina has the details.
Since 2007, Chinese investments in Tajikistan have totaled more than $5.1 billion, according to Sultan Rahimzoda, chairman of the State Committee on Investments and State Property Management. He made the announcement during a session of Tajikistan's parliament. On the same day, lawmakers ratified a bilateral agreement between Tajikistan and China on the mutual protection and promotion of investments. The agreement was signed last year during Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Dushanbe and provides legal safeguards for investors from both countries. Of the total Chinese investment, $2.9 billion came in the form of direct investments, while the remaining $2.2 billion were other types of capital inflows. Rahimzoda highlighted key sectors of Chinese involvement, including mining and processing industries, geological exploration, telecommunications, construction and equipment supply. Currently, more than 700 enterprises in Tajikistan operate with Chinese capital. China also leads in Tajikistan's natural resource extraction. According to official data, 84% of the country's gold production comes from 2 Chinese companies. Meanwhile, Tajikistan's sovereign debt to China is estimated at approximately $900 million. China became Tajikistan's largest foreign investor in 2014, overtaking Russia. The decline in Russian investment continued last year, while the United Kingdom rose to 3rd place among top foreign investors. And today, Tajikistan's main international investment partners are China, the United Kingdom, Russia, and Kazakhstan. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan are working to boost cargo transport along the Trans-Caspian International Transport route. Plans include increasing freight volumes, improving logistics with digital systems, and building a new cargo terminal at Baku's port of Alat to speed up trade between China and Europe. Joining us now is Mr. Kuat Dombey, the Director of the Institute for Central Asian Studies. Mr. Dombey, welcome to AnewZ.
Thank you for inviting. Hello.
Now, what specific measures are Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan implementing to increase cargo transportation along the Trans-Caspian International Transport route?
The transportation of cargo between Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan plays a very important role for both countries due to this middle corridor project. And if we have seen a rapid growth of trade and these transiting volumes growing from 2021 at a pace of 20–30% per year, which is a lot. This year, 2025, is very radical. I would say that last year, the number of containers transiting from China via Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan grew over 170%, so almost doubled in 1 year. And this year, it is expected that the volume of transiting containers will be tripling. That's a huge amount of, in terms of numbers, in terms of tonnage. But this also requires a close cooperation between Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan in terms of synchronizing the logistics, the accountability, the reporting, the electronics, controlling systems, and etc. So that's why the railway and transport authorities of Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, I understand, are working closely to synchronize and provide the smooth path of cargo between our countries and from China and Europe. It is expected that almost 1,000 trains will be providing this transportation this year, and the trade between China and Europe via our region will be almost tripling.
Okay. And how will the new cargo terminal at the port of Alat impact trade efficiency between China and Europe?
Directly, basically. Kazakhstan has already launched the increase of the capacity in the port of Aktau, and also the railway hub on the border with China. So the next logical step is increasing the capacity at the Azerbaijani port, so to avoid any bottlenecking on the way for this dramatic increase of cargo.
Okay. And what role does digitalization play in enhancing the logistics processes along the Trans-Caspian international transport route?
There are a lot of things in terms of customs and information exchange and procedural permissions that will play a key role for smoothing and increasing the speed of cargo transiting from China via our countries. So that's digitalization is very key, of course.
Okay. Mr. Dombay, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's all we have for now from Baku. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ for more updates.